We want to be successful, don't we? We want to be beautiful, interesting, wonderful winners. But mostly we live lives that wind up being these huge mistakes. Like, this is one of the secrets of growing a little bit older. You realize that nothing went according to plan. Even, and maybe especially, all the stuff that went exactly according to plan. So what is the purpose of a life? Well, it can't be to achieve something or to achieve anything, because so often, and maybe always, achievement is, this is the dirty secret that they don't tell you in Tony Robbins' seminars. So often, achievement, attainment, getting the brass ring, the thing that you really, really want, so often, that is completely out of our control. Okay, so there's the term karma in Buddhism, and karma is a loaded term that goes back into Indian history a very long time ago. And I mean, it basically has to do with your intentions and actions today affect how your life manifests tomorrow or the next moment, or several lifetimes later if you're in the school of Buddhism that believes in reincarnation. So it basically has to do with cause and effect. If you behave well and have good intentions, cause, then you have a good life in the future. If you behave poorly and have selfish or malign intentions, you'll have a crummy life in the future. Karma was a word that my teacher never used. I never heard him use that word once. And that's not unusual. There were a lot of Buddhist terms I never heard him use. I never heard him use the word satori or enlightenment, and I never heard him use the word karma. But I do remember once when he was having some trouble with this monk, this older guy who had dived into the shallow end of a pool in high school, and by his own admission, this had probably made him, he'd hit his head at the bottom of the pool, and by his own admission, this had probably made him a little cuckoo. And he was a really, I don't know, man, sometimes you get these Zen students who are just, they are like the most stubborn, like confrontational SOBs you could ever possibly imagine. And he was one of them. And I remember my teacher he was always engaged in these like sumo match type confrontations with this guy. Like they're smashing into each other rhetorically and argumentatively. And I remember my teacher telling me after one of these arguments, I remember him telling me, I respect this monk's character. He said, everybody has a certain character. And he said, I respect that. I respect this monk's character. And I think when he said that, I saw a glimpse of this idea of karma or fate. Your life has a certain momentum. Like right away, right out of the gates. Picasso was never going to come up with E=mc², and Einstein was never going to paint Guernica. And you and I were never going to do either of those things. You and I, we were born in a certain place to certain parents with a certain kind of body. We have certain talents. We probably have a certain IQ. Like, to the best of my knowledge, you can't really affect IQ. And we can say, well, IQ is kind of a BS societal metric. True, but we can't change the fact that we were born into a society where that metric has some meaning. You have a certain character and certain characteristics, and the world that you were born into has a certain character and certain characteristics, all of which are somewhat fixed in stone. This, to me, is the idea of karma. And as I've gotten older, against my character, I've started to kind of realize the importance of the teachings of karma in Buddhism, and I've kind of come to respect the idea of karma in my life. I was always really kind of anxious and neurotic as a kid. Like, my dad tells this story about how he was watching me, his firstborn son, breastfeed. And he said I was like at the nipple and I was kind of falling asleep. And then I woke up and I was like sucking. I was totally, give me the milk. And then I would get the milk. It would have an effect on my nervous system. My poor little infant body would relax finally, and I would drift asleep. And then I would wake up again and I would start like histrionically sucking at the nipple to make sure I got all the milk. And my father, being the man of honesty that he is, said, I saw your whole character in that moment. I saw the kind of life you were going to lead and the kind of person you were going to be. And I thought, it's going to be an uphill battle for him to get over that sort of anxiety mechanism, because it was there from the start. When I was in high school, I decided I was going to overcome this anxiety mechanism with self-help. And so there are these cassette tapes, these self-help cassette tapes by this company called Earl Nightingale. And they had subconscious manipulator tapes. So you'd put them in and it would be just like classical music or ocean waves, and there were subconscious messages coming in from the bottom of these tapes, and they were whispering. Like I always got the one that said confidence, because I wanted to be a great basketball player. I was scrawny, uncoordinated, thin, and weak, and for some reason I got it in my head that I was really wanted to be a basketball player. And I was born in neoliberal red state America, which is to say you can do whatever you want in life. You can succeed. You should succeed. You can be whatever you want to be. Like, this is the reigning ideology of our time. You are an individual, self-sufficient, self-reliant. You can shape yourself. I believed in this ideology. I was like, someone born into the caste system in India during the time of the Buddha, who completely and totally believes that the divine order indicated where they should be, how they should be, and why they're there. I completely bought into this ideology of individualism, and I was convinced that I could use my mind to change my mind, and then properly retooled, this mind could, move me through life in a very successful way. So I listened to all these self-help tapes, right? And I actually even made this is so embarrassing. I even made my own self-help tapes. So I played Beatles music, and then I had a little cassette recorder, and I was recording the Beatles music, and then I was in the background and I was whispering just under audibility, because you can't be audible for it to be subconscious. So I was whispering these like, you're gonna shoot the basketball, you'll make the shot every time, you're the best player ever, None of this worked. I tried so many different ways of thinking when I would go into a game or into practice. Like so many different ways of trying to manipulate my mind so that I could forget myself and give my clean best and be a hero on the basketball court. 4 years, never happened. Never happened. I was the worst basketball player ever. I failed. So you'd have thought I would learn my lesson, right? But truth be told, I have gone through much of my adult life the same way, trying to change myself, trying to be some other way, or trying to be somebody else. And like, how do you change that? Because I've tried. I mean, in some sense, my initial foray into Buddhism was trying to change the fact that I'm always trying to change myself. Like, you see the vicious circle here. You know, the truth is, sometimes you can't change yourself and you can't change your life. This is like the dirty secret that hyper-individualistic American winner culture can't admit. Because then, like, the whole thing falls apart and we need a whole new ideology. Which in some sense I think is beginning to happen in America. Perhaps that is fodder for a different video. But as I've gotten older, I've also started to see how all these different aspects of myself that I thought were flaws have actually wound up being a kind of source of energy, if you will, that push me deeper into new ventures, for example, like writing books about my Zen experience or becoming an Osho in the Zen Buddhist tradition. These are things that I never would have done if I had gotten what I wanted to get out of life. And so I step back and I look at the big picture and I think to myself, I wanted certain things and I didn't get them, and somehow I've wound up with exactly the life that I was aimed at from the very beginning, when I was neurotically sucking on my mother's breast. I can see that I had a certain momentum, and my life is playing out according to that momentum. And I'm both riding the wave of that momentum and falling under the wave and drowning under it, and occasionally leaping upon the surfboard of circumstance and riding the wave. But whatever the case, it's my wave. That to me is karma. It's causes and conditions. It's your circumstance. It's one's reality, both on the outside and the inside, and the way they interact and give rise to your life. Karma has become an increasingly kind of important teaching to me because it makes life play, right? It makes life play. It takes some of the self-seriousness out of my situation, right? There are certain circumstances or momentums or energies, causes and conditions that are playing out, right? It's not all up to me. It takes some of the responsibility for my life off of my shoulders and makes it such that I don't have to be bitter when things don't turn out the way I wished they would turn out. Because bitterness is more and more of a problem as I get older. There's a part of me that just becomes a little bit bitter. And when I relax into the concept of karma, it's like, dude, things are happening, right? They're happening as they're supposed to happen. They're happening in ways that were begun before you were born and will play out after you die, right? Play. To me, the concept and teaching of karma is very intimately bound up with this idea of play. And I used to notice this in my teacher's eyes when something strange or bad or good would happen that he seemed to be responsible for. A lot of times he seemed very surprised. Like with a good Zen teacher, I've always found an element of playfulness to their character. Like they're oftentimes surprised by what's going on in their life. They're surprised by it. And whether it's bad or whether it's good karma, they're surprised by it. It's interesting, right? There was this attitude of having an engagement with their lives, but not an attachment to certain outcomes. So a clear understanding of karma for me also means that I can stop cheating, right? So this is something I've talked about recently, and I kind of want to approach it from the angle of karma now. So, for example, back when I was playing basketball in high school, honestly, in a sense, I was reaching, striving, grabbing for a certain outcome. Okay? I wanted to manipulate reality such that I had like good stats as a basketball player. Okay? Now, the fact of the matter is, I should have worked harder and more clearly and more straightforwardly. So an embrace of the teaching of karma simplifies your life and clarifies what you need to do. So you don't sit around listening to a bunch of subliminal self-help tapes trying to manipulate your subconscious so that you become a winner and become a better basketball player. You very straightforwardly work on your game. You give all your energy, all your heart, sincerely and simply to the work, motherfuckers. And then what come may will come in May. How does that saying go? Whatever will be, right? Like there's not this grasping attachment to an outcome. I remember when I used to live in Los Angeles, dudes, I would be driving my car and there was a agency or a production office or something near my house, and I would see all these poor actors on the street, like outside the office, and they'd all be holding their sheets, their call sheets, and they'd not be reading the lines, and blah, blah, blah. You could see them performing these lines on the street, like, excuse me, detective, I don't think that you're, blah, blah, blah. And I remember like watching these people, watching the desperation, right? Like the desperation to succeed. Like there's like 30 people on the sidewalk, walking around in circles, speaking to ghosts, reading their lines, practicing their lines because they're going to go in and audition for this role and only one of them is going to get it. Like I'm sorry, but that's desperation. And we all want to succeed. We all want to be that one person. I wanted to be that one great basketball player, but I didn't have control over that. These actors don't have control over whether or not they get the part. I mean, someone's going to win the presidential election in America next year. Who knows who? I don't know that anybody has any control over who that person is going to be. It's fate. It's karma. We have control over where we put our attention. That's what we have control over. And how we give ourselves to activity. And that's Zen teaching. And that's what you do in a Zen practice. That's what Zazen meditation is. You're giving yourself to sitting. You're doing the simplest activity you can do with as much sincerity as you can possibly do it. And that just means putting attention into your breath. And through the attention, you dissolve that thinking self, that striving self, that self that wants something. And then meditation arises. But you have no control over it. You, me, we don't meditate, right? We just do the work. So that's, as I've begun to age, mature, mellow, ripen, I've begun to sort of realize, like after failure, and my life taken some strange tangents and detours, I've started to realize this is just what it is, right? And I can watch it play out and be a part of it, and I can decide or see what's truly important and then give myself to that work and give myself to that activity. But as far as the outcome goes, as far as success goes, as far as me becoming a winner, which always means there's going to be a loser somewhere, as far as me becoming that, none of that is my business. That's the business of the gods. That's the business of karma. That's causes and conditions. And I have found that life is so much more fun, and my heart opens up so much more to the people around me, and I have less judgment for them, and I have a more fun and playful attitude towards the circumstances of my life as I just don't hang on to my old notions of success and winning anymore, and my old notions of what my life should be and how I am here to achieve something. So, hope that's helpful. If you would like to contribute to your good karma, no, that's not right. You can become a patron. You can become a patron. I'm going to put my link to my Patreon page right here. It's patreon.com. No, it's patreon.com patreon.com/Shozan I'm doing Sunday sits on my Patreon with my patrons. Not always, but we do Sunday sits. I've got essays up there. I've got blog posts, and it's a nice and interesting little online community which you can join and help to support this channel. I really appreciate that. This helps me pay my bills over here in Europe, where my bizarre karma has led me to Europe, where I look across the drink at America and I miss it and I don't. But anyways, thanks for watching. Hit subscribe and hit like and hit notifications. That helps this channel too. I'll see you next time, friends. Ciao.